Hi guys, so welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is the second part of CSS Basics. If you haven't seen the first part, I'm going to leave the card up there, and you can also check the link in the description. This will probably make a lot more sense if you watch the first one first. So, that being said, the first thing I'm going to talk about are measurement units in CSS. So there's a whole bunch of units in CSS. So we've been using mainly pixels. We also have points, PT, rem, m, percentages, VW, VH, there's lots of them. We're going to concentrate on a couple right now. We've been digging into pixels, so I want to show you M's and rems also. So we're going to create a call to action box. So what we want to do is jump down below our form box that we had. And if you just do the emmet command .cta, we'll create a div with a class of CTA. Okay, so we're going to style this box and we're going to talk about percentages. So let's put a H3 in here. I'm going to say sign up to our newsletter. And below it, we're just going to do some ipsum. So if you do a paragraph tag and you type in lorem, 8 tab, and that'll give us 8 characters of lorem ipsum. Let's give that a save. And you can see right down here at the bottom, I'm just going to actually add a few BR tags at the bottom just to run it off the bottom of the page, just so it's easy for us to see. So you don't have to do this, it's just so we can see it not too close to the bottom. Okay, perfect. So let's style this call to action box, this CTA box. So if we just jump down to where we finished and do .cta, and we're going to give it a background color, and we're going to give that a background color of hash. I'm going to give it this one, 113355. Okay, so it's a nice dark blue color. Now the font can't be seen because it's a bit too dark. So what we could do is we could style the CTA, we could do it like this, .cta paragraph, or the CTA H3, I think it was. But what we can do is, because the fonts will inherit the color from its parent, so we can actually say CTA color white in here. So that will make sure everything that's inside it, if it hasn't been directly targeted and changed the color, it will make it the color we want by just doing it here. Okay, so let's give it a height. So we can give this a height of 200 pixels, right? So this is right now at the bottom. So now width, let's do a percentage here. So we want the width of this to be 60%. Okay, and there it goes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up the page a little bit just so it doesn't keep dropping to the bottom. So I'm just going to grab this CTA, this whole section, and just move it. Let's move it above the list item. So literally just cutting it out and just moving it. There we go, just so it's higher up the page. Okay. So what we want to do now is we could center this box. So we're 60% wide. So let's say 60%, we have 40% left to play with. So we could say a margin, let's give it 40 pixels at the top and bottom. And then we say 20% left and right. So that should center it because it has that. It has the 60 plus 20 left, 20 right. You wouldn't really mix values like this. It's not a good idea. You could also do auto here. What auto does is it basically matches the left and the right. So it should center it. So whatever is going to go on the left is going to go on the right. So that's very handy. You see this quite a lot. Margin 0 auto is very common, but I'm just doing 40 pixels top and bottom, automatic left and right margins, which centers our CTA. Okay, so let's center all the text, and we can do that by text align, text hyphen align, center, and it needs a little bit of padding, so let's do a padding of 15 pixels. Okay. let's give that a font. What have we got? Let's do font 20 pixels. Font 400, 20 pixels, Arial, just so it looks a little nicer. There we go, perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the index and we're going to add a class to our paragraph. So inside the CTA, we'll say class equals CTA text, CTA-text, okay? Give that a save. So underneath here, .cta-text, we'll have a little play around with the measurement types. So we assign 20 pixels above here. So if we wanted to change the font size here, we could. So font size, because this is more specific, right? Font size 30 pixels. Okay, perfect. We probably want it to be around 20 pixels is good. But what we could also do is we can use M's. I'm going to remove this altogether, the one in the CTA. And so we've got font size 20 pixels in the CTA text. If we use font size 1M, what this is doing is it's a multiplier. M is a multiplier, so it's saying 1 times my parent's font size. Now the parent at the moment doesn't have a font size. If I give it that font size back, so I'm just going to give it the font size back. So font, we'll do font 400, 20 pixels, Arial. So we're going to give it back. It's now, this is 20 pixels because it's a multiplier. Watch. If I go into the computer property, you can see font size is 20 pixels, right, in the CTA text. Now if I said 1.5, give that a save, if we look again, the computer property, the font size is 30, which is 1.5 the times of 20. So it's a multiplier of the parent. Now the difference between this and rem, if I just do 1 rem, we'll do the same thing, we'll show you this. Computed, 16 pixels. Now the reason being is rem is a root multiplier. What I mean by that is we haven't set a default pixel size for the font, but most browsers have a default of 16 pixels. So this is looking for the default root, and if we haven't set it, that is the browser that is on the HTML element, 16 pixels. So if we change that to 2, it will go to 32 times, sorry, if you save that, it will go to 32 pixels. So they're used for different things. I'm going to say 1.2. So with M, you can control locally when you want to change files inside with M. Rem, I use rem a lot more. You just need to remember it's a 16 pixel by default and to multiply from that. So I find rem much more useful, but M is to do stuff locally with a parent. Right, so now we're going to talk about specificity. And that took me a few takes. We're going to jump into our index, and just below our CTA, we're going to create another box, and we're going to give it a paragraph tag with lorem 12 tab. So I'll give us 12 characters of lorem with Emmet. So if you just save that, here it is now. Okay, so specificity. If we wanted to color this font, we jump into style here. At the moment it's black. If I said P and I could say color purple, and that's changed all the things, which is not what we're after, right? If I then went to my index and added a class on this P tag equals, and I call this blue, and I'm just going to jump back into the style. I'm going to say blue, and I'm going to give it a color of blue. Is it going to remain purple or blue? It's going to go blue because a class is more specific than a HTML tag, right? if then I added an ID, so I'm going to say ID equals green, then I'm just going to go into here and add a green ID, hash green, color green. That's going to overwrite it, right? I'm just going to comment this out just to show you something. We can add two classes to an element. So if I say class blue space red, then what I'm going to do is just do a dot red class, color of red. Okay. Now that's red. Now the reason could be that red is the second class here. So it adds the blue style and adds the red. But it's actually not. It's to do with the cascade in the CSS. So if I actually put red, I'm just going to cut red out and put it above blue, give that a save, you can see that now it's blue. Even though in our index, blue's first, red second, doesn't matter the order. It comes from the style sheet. Okay? So that being said, if it comes from the style sheet, if I add green here, we know that's going to go green. If I move this ID above even the paragraph, it's still going to be green. And that's because an ID is so much more specific than a class. It's 256 times more specific. It would take you 256 classes chained to overwrite an ID. Let's comment out that green again, because we know this is very specific. So what we also can do, and look, we're only looking at this one, we could add a paragraph tag with a class of blue. With a class of red. I'm going to say color red. Okay, and that's now overwritten it because it's underneath, right? If I move this p red, let's move it just underneath the regular p tag. It's still gonna overrule. If I remove this red, you can still see this red is overruling this blue. And even though it's ahead of it in the style sheet, in the cascade, this is just more specific, because before, this red and this blue had the same specificity, right? Right now, it's not. Right now, we're saying a tag that has a class of red. This isn't the same as having a space here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this one out for now. So back blue. So what we can do is with this, we have a box with a class of blue. So let's go and we can do dot box, which is the parent, right? If we have a look in the HTML, box is the parent. So we can say a box that has another element inside it that has a class, which is where the space comes in, dot red, brackets, and we can say color red. If we give that a save, you notice it's red here. Let's comment this one out, just make sure. So we're saying a box, and inside that box, anything that has a class of red. It's not the same as having this without the space, because that's saying something that has both a class of box and red. So we can do that. Let's do it on, let's add this back. So we can say blue and red. So why don't we do that? So if a element has a blue and red, so no space, let's make blue and red, it goes purple, right? So you can see it's gone purple because the specificity, and we're lower down in the cascade. So there's a few things you can watch out for, how to do it. You could even do box with P, for example. So there's ways you can chain them together. You can be using the parent and the child. You can be using two classes on them. You could be using a tag and a class. There's lots of ways to get that specificity out there. So you might be wondering why you would use two classes on one element. Well, I'm just going to save this now. I'm just going to go back to the index. And we're going to add another box underneath the one we've just been working on. Dot box tab. And we're going to make a next and previous button page on this. So we're going to have two A links, A href equals, I'm just going to put a hash in there. That's a universal symbol of just don't go anywhere. And we're going to add class equals btn, and yeah, we'll keep it at btn for now. Close that off and we'll do prev, previous. Let's just copy that and make a next button. So there we do. We've got two next buttons now, just two next links. So you can style links to look like buttons. So let's do that. Let's go to our style. Right below our stuff here, I'm going to comment out some of this, all these colors here, because it looks a bit naff. There we go. So let's go down here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a button that we can then add extra styles to with another class. So let me show you this. Let's jump back to the index actually. I'm going to say button. I'm going to say btn hyphen blue. And the next one, we're going to say btn hyphen outline. Okay. Let's jump back to style. We'll say dot btn, btn. So the first one we want to do is button. So this will apply to both buttons. So we want to add a padding, 12 pixels, 24 pixels. And this is just to make them more button-like in a little bit. We don't want that underlined, so we say text decoration, none. Right, so let's get rid of that text. We want the font size to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to do that 20 pixels. And let's give them a little bit of margin, just to space them out a little bit. Margin 4 pixels. Okay. So they still look like just text links really with no underline and a little bit bigger. So what we're going to do next is do button hyphen blue. Then we're going to add the styles that only apply to the blue button. Okay. So first thing we want to do is give it a background color. Just say background, we don't need to do the color. And we're going to give it that color of that second one, 113355. Okay, I'm going to give it that one. So it's only applied to the first one. We obviously want the color to be white. And let's round those borders a little bit. So we're going to add this to both buttons. So let's put border hyphen radius of 6 pixels for both of them. Okay, so it looks a bit more like a button. Now the second one is the button outline, btn-outline. And for the button outline, we're just wanting to add a border. That's going to be 1 pixel, solid. That's going to be the same color we used as the background last time, 113355. Okay, and obviously the color wants to be exactly the same as that. Hash 113355. There we go. So now we're using most of the styling from here, then just adding their specific own bits to them with the second class. So that's the reason why you would add two classes to the same element. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about layout. And this is a topic that can really go deep in. There's lots of different things we can do. So we're not going to go massively deep in here, and we'll see a little bit more about layout in the next video. So let's add ourselves 3 boxes. So let's go before our buttons. So before our previous and next buttons, and do dot box. Then if we go again, dot box hyphen display and hit tab, this will tell Emmet to add 2 classes. So there's no space between dot box and dot box display. Hit tab, it does them both for you, which is great. So I'm just going to say box 1, and in fact I'm going to copy this, and we're going to copy that 3 times. So box 1, box 2, box 3. Okay, so we can see here we have those 3 boxes. So if I now go to the style, and I'm going to create a dot box hyphen display in my CSS. So what we can do, as you can see, they're underneath each other, because they're display block, we could force them display inline. Right? We can force them to be in line with each other. You see how now they're kind of squashed up a little bit? If we change that to inline block, you can see now it's not forcing itself to not have padding and margin, because this box has padding here, right? So inline block looks a lot better in this circumstance because it allows us to have padding and margin on the box. We can also do things like display none. So if I just go in here and say display none, they disappear. Now that's useful for if you want to click a button and reveal them, or if you want to hide them later, you click a button to hide something. You could set this with JavaScript to be display none, display inline block. There's also, if I just remove this, visibility hidden. As you can see, it has actually given us something here. I inspect, go into our container, you can still see the boxes and they still have their heights. They're just not visible on the page, okay? So we could, let's keep display inline block. We could also do opacity 0, which will just turn them down. And 0, it goes all the way to 1, so 0.4 will show them a little bit, 0.5, so you can have that control there as well. If you were hiding them with JavaScript, you would choose display none. So next we're going to look at floats, and I don't use floats that often anymore. They were used for layouts mainly, but we have other things for layouts now. But they are useful for one thing. This is the only time I've used them in the last 2 years. So we jump back to our index, and let's go below our CTA. So just below our CTA, I'm going to say dot float to create a div with a class of float. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an image in here. So triangle brackets img source src equals, and you can see I've added an image here, image.jpg. So if you want to grab an image and just save it to the same folder, and then you can use the image tag like this, give that a save, and you can see you've got this house here. So my image is 400 pixels. So let's, underneath the image, do a paragraph tag, hit tab, and we're going to have some lorem. Maybe we're going to have, let's say 60 words of lorem. So lorem 60, tab. And if I just expand this a little bit, you can see the image is followed by the text, right? Now what float allows you to do, if I just jump back into the style.css and do a dot float img, so we're saying we want to target an image within the float. And what we want to do, we want to say float left. As you can see on the right hand side, we now have the image to the left and the text starts on the right and kind of goes down. We can also do a float right, obviously, and does the same thing. And if I extend this out, you see the problem we now have is the image is floating away from the layout. So this is the problem that we have. So it's actually cutting into the next element. So the way we can fix that is we can go into our index. I'm just going to tuck this in a little bit. Go back into our index. Outside our float div, we can just do a dot clear. So I'm just making these names up, dot clear. Give that a save. Then if I go back to style, do a dot clear, and we can add a clear both. Now given that a save, now if I zoom this out again, you can see that now the image isn't digging into the one below. So this is just basically clearing the floats so that the layout can continue in the way it would do. So that's how you clear floats. So now we're going to use a few more semantic HTML elements and look deeper into how we lay out stuff on a proper website. So we're going to start looking at doing a navigation menu bar at the top of the page, the header bar. So how we do this, jump into our index, and we're going to go right to the top, outside of the container, and we're going to do a header. If you just type in header tab, so no dot, it will give you a header semantic HTML5 elements. So we do that, and things we want is we want an image at one side, and we want the nav bar links at the other side. So let's add an image. So if we just type in img, hit tab, and it will give us the source, and I've added a logo.png. So if you guys want to find a logo you want to use, I also give the repo for this in the description, so you can actually steal the logos and images from me if you want. And we can say the alt tag is going to be a logo. Okay, so if we just jump back to the top, there he is. So next thing we want to do is we want to add the navigation for the other side. So add a nav, and inside that we're going to make an unordered list, because this is how we generally make navigations. We use lists. So if I do a UL tab, and I want to do an li, and inside the li we want an a. So hit a tab. It's really quick to get things out. So I'm going to put a hash in the href, and we're just going to say home in here. And let's just copy this li tag 3 times. So we're going to do home, about, contact, right? Give that save, and you can see it's kind of all downwards. It's not what we want. So this is how we're going to use Flexbox, which is a layout positioning in CSS to make this do what we want to do. So at the moment, the logo is a little bit too big. So let's jump to the style. I'm going to say header image. So an image inside a header tag. We want the width of it to be 30 pixels. Now, if you don't specify a height, it will just do the height as well. So we have a small logo there. What I also want to do is make the header itself, I'm just going to go above, header, I'm going to make the header 60 pixels, okay? Oops, header height, 60 pixels. Drag this out so you can see it. Now let's make the li elements inside our nav, let's make them in line. So we can do that by saying nav, li, display, inline block, because we want to be able to give padding and margin if we want to. So it's kind of going in the right direction. Now what we want to do is we want to start looking at how to move the nav all the way to the right. The logo is roughly in the right position, but the nav wants to go to the right. So there's something called Flexbox. So if we go to the header, and we say display flex, right? Now if I save this, you can see it's done something weird. So as default, it adds something called stretch. You can see it's stretching this image. So there's 2 main layout properties that we're going to use for Flexbox. There's a kind of an X and a Y property. And what I mean by that is this. So if I did justify hyphen content, and I did flex end, you can see that. It moves everything to one side. So obviously it started with a flex start, which is everything at the beginning. Now there's a couple more as well. So content, there is a space around. You can see it's almost done what we want to do, and there's a space between, which is the one we're going to use. There's a couple of others also. It's still stretched, so what we need to do is now we've taken care of the horizontal, we need to take care of the vertical. And it has very similar properties and values. And we say to do this, align hyphen items. And so it has similar. So you can say align items flex end. So now you can see it's dropped down to the bottom of the header. I'm just going to quickly put a border on the bottom so you can see it. Border hyphen bottom. 2 pixels, solid black, just so you can see this. So that's where it is. So by doing flex end, it's dropped to the bottom vertically. Flex start will take it to the top. And you notice the logo isn't stretched anymore. But we can also do center, and it will center it vertically. Okay? So if we just add a little bit of padding in here, padding, we don't want any at the top and the bottom really, because we have that centered with the flex box. Let's just add 15 pixels for the left and right, just so it looks a bit smarter. So there you go, that's kind of looking a bit more like what we'd have in a navigation. So with Flexbox, you can move things all around. You can put them underneath each other, you can put them side by side, then you can pull them together, apart, one side, so you can see the control that you have with it. So there's a few other positioning styles that we can use that are very useful. So let's go to our CTA, and what we're going to do is we're going to add, so go to our CTA and our HTML, we're going to add another image in here, right? So if I do an IMG, hit tab, and I've just added another logo in here called notify. Oops, that's notify.png. Give it notify in the alt. You can see it's this little red bell button. So actually, while you're here, like and subscribe and ring that bell, as they all say. And what we need to do now is I want to put this little bell in this corner up here, and we can do that with positioning it absolutely. So I'm just going to give this a class, the image equals notify. Now if I jump into the style, and we're going to go to where the CTA is, so this CTA here, so just below that. Actually in the CTA, we're going to give it a position of relative, okay? Now when I save that, it doesn't do anything. And that's because it's actually the magic in the next bit, which will do what we want it to do. So we called our little bell notify, so class of bell. Now if I say position absolute, then if I just hit save, you can see it's kind of just jumped out, kind of like what float did, it jumped out of the flow of everything, right? And the reason that is now because we can position this element relative to this CTA box, right? So what I mean by that is, by using the top property, I can set top to 0, and it will go right up to the very top of the box. Now if I said right 0, it should go to the very right of the box. And you can move this around by pixels, whatever you want to do. 100 pixels, there you go. We could even do this in ems if you wanted. So we could say 10 pixels. But what I actually want to do is I want to say minus 15. And we'll say minus 15 pixels here because I know my image is 30 pixels. Let's do it minus 12 and 12 because I want it to overlap a little bit more. And you can kind of position it in that corner. So you can move this little icon throughout the whole thing if you wanted. You can do it with percentages if you wanted also. So another useful way to position things is position something by fixed. So if I just jump into my index, I've got a Facebook logo in my project folder now. So I'm going to go right to the top of my document, in fact, right up to the head, just to show you this. So if I just do an image source equals Facebook PNG, I can give it an alt if I want, but it's just to show you guys. I need a class on this, so do a class equals, I don't know, social. Now if I jump back into the style, I can just go underneath this notify, and I can say dot social. I can say position fixed. There you can see it's just jumped right to the top, and as I scroll it stays there. Now the good thing about this would be I could say top like 400 pixels maybe. So it's always going to stay on that screen in that position. So it's good for things like this, like social media, where you want people to click on things. So you can have a anchor tag with that image in. So that's position fixed. So the last one that ties in with layout for now will be translate. So translate is useful for animations, really. So you can actually move things around the screen no matter what they are, really, using this. So let's say we're going to grab hold of this social, and I'm going to say transform, translate. You can see a few of them come up. I think it's x-axis, then y-axis. So let's say 20 pixels, comma, 10 pixels. And as you can see, I've moved it away. I can say this is like 220. And you can see, where's it gone? It's gone into the middle here, right? So this is the way to finally move things around the page. And if you had a startup animation, what you might do is you might start the animation off the screen at like minus 60 pixels, something like that. Then as the animation goes through, it slowly moves itself to 0 pixels, 0 pixels. So it moves itself to its final resting place. And you can do that by translate Y and just give it one command. So translate Y, 100 pixels, or translate X as well. So I just wanted to introduce you to something called box sizing. Now box sizing is a little bit of a weird one, but I thought it'd best go into this section. Let's go for our sign up container, okay? So this is our CTA. Now let's give our CTA a width of 400 pixels. There you go. Right. So we have a call to action with 400 pixels. Let's add a border of 10 pixels, solid, hash. We're going to go to green color, hash 1BB938. So we have this nice green background, right? This green border. Now, if I inspect this, we said this wanted to be 400 width, right? And as you can see, if I go to computed, actually, this is 400 plus 15 padding plus 10 border plus 30.454 because it's a percentage. So this is not 400 pixels anymore. The middle bit is, but everything else isn't. Now what box sizing helps you do, if you need something to be a certain size, including the padding, the padding and the borders, what you can do is you can add a property to it called box-sizing border-box. Now this should shrink. And the reason that is now, if we inspect, is because it's adding things together. Okay? So I'll go to computed. So now the CTA, it's actually the middle bit is 350. But all together is 400. Okay? So if you need something to be a specific size, including the padding and the borders, you need to add box sizing as a property to it. Okay, so another thing I want to just look at very quickly. Now I'm just going to change this background color to white. I'm going to change our border to 1 pixel solid black, and the color of our font wants to be black also. So we just have this white thing here, and I want to just show you something called box shadow. What box shadow is, as you may know or may be able to gather, is box-shadow, and it has a few properties. It has an X, a Y, so horizontal, vertical, and also a spread, and a color. So let's do a color of hash. Let's do 113355. We've used that often. Okay, so if I now just delete this border, you can see what's gone on. It's given itself a shadow, but it actually looks like a border. If I increase this here to 4, say, you can see it's moving. So it's adding more pixels to one side. You can also do minus, so you can add shadow to the other side. But it actually just looks like a border at the moment. So let's do a 4 pixel, 4 pixel. And this is why it's looking like a 1 pixel border. This is the blur radius. And so if I put this up to 6, you can see it's getting a little bit smoother now. So 10, a little bit more. Okay, 20. We also have another property that's not needed, but that is the spread radius. As you can see now, because it's spreading, it actually can go up as well because it's just spreading out overall. So you could do a nice 3 pixel spread, but you actually want the, let's go 6 and 6. So you can create a nice little box shadow on your elements. Okay, so now with our call to action box, our CTA box, let's give it a background image, a background pattern instead of our color. So let's just remove background color. We can do this with background image or just background. I'm going to use background. Then we need to give it a value of URL, then brackets, then we need to put inside quotes where our file is. So I would think pattern.png, but that won't work because our CSS, remember, if I look here, our CSS file is within a folder. So we need to go out of where we are back to the root where the pattern PNG is. And we do that by giving pattern.png in front of it // which takes us back out. And as you can see now, it has a pattern. We can do a few things here. We can say background repeat, no repeat, no hyphen repeat. And then you'll just take a section of it like that. We can give it a background size, hyphen size, do like 1,000 pixels. Oh, sorry, 1,000 pixels like that. Makes it really big. Or you can also do things like contain, which contains the image in it. But you can see here, it's contained within the box, but it doesn't stretch it out. There's also cover, which will make sure the background image covers the container. So they're very useful ones. And there's also background position. So you can move the background around. So let's say 200 pixels and 100 pixels. So you can move it around in its container there like that. Okay, so let's just remove that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about pseudo classes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to our links here. So let's find them in our CSS. Here we go. So what we can do with these are, we can say a link, a list item, anchor, and we can say when it's hovered, which is :hover, we can change the color of this. So we can change the color to, let's say, hash. Let's go a lighter color. So let's say 335577. Give that a save. Then when we hover over them, they go lighter. So this is a pseudo class. Very useful. You have ones for visited as well. You can also use pseudo elements like this. So if we say we had a list item, we want the first hyphen child, so the first list item child, to have a background color of red, for instance. And that will just only do the first LI with background color of red. There's also last child. You can also do it with odds and evens. So you could say list item nth hyphen child brackets, and then you can do odd. So this is very good for striping tables. You can also do numbers in here. So first position, second position, and things like that. So along with pseudo classes, we can also do pseudo elements, which is adding something to a page that doesn't exist in real life, I guess. So for instance, we have these box display. So if I go to box display, wherever that is, box display, what I can do here is I can say .box hyphen display after colon after So I was saying after the box display element, we can do content. This is something you need to do. So no content. We can say a height of, let's say 40 pixels, a width of 40 pixels. Let's do a background color of #113355 and a position of absolute. You can see now these boxes have appeared. These boxes are in the HTML, right? These boxes have just appeared. So now we could position them. If we went here and we did position relative on the box display, then we can say top 0. So we go to the top of our box. We can say left minus 30 pixels. So you can see you're positioning them relative to the box now because they're positioned absolutely. So you can do things like create stickers with these. So you could do a border dash radius of 40 pixels. So you can make like a nice little circular badge. All sorts of things that you can do with pseudo elements. There's also a before pseudo element. So you can actually have 3 elements from one HTML tag. So you can have a before, the element, and an after element. Okay, I'm just going to remove that before element, give that a save. And I want to talk a little bit about media queries now. Now what media queries are, for our use, we're going to be able to adjust things on a page when we shrink the browser or there's a different size. So for instance, your mobile, your tablet, your desktop, you might need to have different sized elements or things could be hidden on different sizes. Also, you can do this for printing. You can hide things on the print. So how we do these media queries is say at media screen, because we only want this applied to screen and not print, and max -width, and I'm going to say 900 pixels here. Okay, sorry, 900 pixels. Then we're going to grab our form. So our form is called .contact form. I'm going to say the width is going to go to 100%. So if we just save that, you can see it's now gone to 100%. If I go past 900 pixels, there you go, it's gone to 50%. So on smaller screens, we can effectively say, change the size of the form so it's easier to use on things like tablets and mobiles. Okay, so that's how you can do it. And you can do that for all sorts. You can do that for colors, anything you can do in CSS. You can add a media query. You can do it for the height. You can do it for the width, all sorts. Okay, so just a quick word on the important attribute, I guess, in CSS. Sometimes you will see people do things like, so button blue, color red, exclamation mark, important, then the closing semicolon. This is bad. Don't ever do this. You see here, this is bad. And the reason this is bad is because the style sheet cascades, people might try fixing what you've done and they can't because you've added these important tags in everywhere. People add these in the first place because they can't find the problem. They've got a problem with their specificity, right? So they might have styled an ID tags with this and this class added on. Never do this. There shouldn't be a reason to do this. You should always be able to find how to change something like a color of an element without having to do this. You just need to find a problem. So important is a no-no. Don't ever use it. And briefly, I want to talk about CSS variables or CSS custom properties, as they're properly called. Now, I actually never used these until doing this because if you get to this stage of learning CSS, you will probably be moving on to Sass, which has custom variables built in a nicer way than CSS does. So this is a fairly new feature or a newer feature of CSS. And what it means is, so we've been using this hash 13355 a lot. So I'm going to copy this. And all it is if I jump to the top, I'm just going to go underneath our star, you can say things like colors to a name. And the reason that's useful is because if you then change that color at the top of the document, it'll change it throughout the document. You don't have to go replace all the colors individually. So let me explain. So we're going to do this :root tag. Then we're going to say dash or hyphen brand. So just giving it a name of brand. This can be any name. So hyphen brand. Then we're going to give it our color, right? So now we've set a variable called brand to root, which is to our page. So now we can go find where we've used this brand, this color. So we've used it here. And instead of saying color hash 1355, or whatever it is, 1355, we can say var brackets hyphen brand. Okay? And we can do that throughout the whole document now. We can copy this, and anytime we see this brand color, we can just replace it. Where else have we got it? So we can go through our document and replace it like this. And then if we ever decide to change our brand color, we only need to do it here in one place. So we can do it, like we can change here, and it will change a lot of our items all in one. If I change it back, change them all in one. So that's why they're great. But like I said, you learn them in Sass, which is the next step after learning a fair bit of CSS. So this is something I've really not dug into, and you probably won't either, but it's something worth noting that you can do in CSS. Hey guys, so congratulations on making it to the end of part 2 of this CSS basics course, which is basically taking all the knowledge we've learned into making a really stylish website. If you've liked this video and if you want to help me out, if you want to subscribe, that's great. A like, a comment, everything helps. The link's in the description for part 3, and I will see you next time.